Savitri answered to almighty death. Oh, death, I have triumphed over thee within. O death, not for my heart's sweet poignancy, nor for my happy body's bliss alone. I have claimed from thee the living Satyavan, but for his work and mine, our sacred charge. Our lives are God's messengers beneath the stars, to dwell under death's shadow. They have come, tempting God's light to earth for the ignorant race.
Good morning. On this day before Diwali with the loud explosions in the background. So we're reading in Book 10, the book of the double Twilight, Canto 3, the debate of love and death. And we've come to page 630, halfway down. Would you like a book? You can follow along. So we're in the middle of Savitri's long explanation to death about the nature and meaning of our existence. She has been describing how the divine has immersed himself in the inconscient and is slowly, gradually waking up from that sleep of consciousness. And in that long awakening, it has assumed contrary forms of that consciousness, of that original consciousness. It has taken on appearances of dualities, of various opposites, apparently in conflict with one another. I'll just read a little from last time at the top of page 628. She says, "The bliss that made the world has fallen asleep. Abandoned in the vast, she slumbered on. An evil transmutation overtook her members till she knew herself no more. Only through her creative slumber flit frail memories of the joy and beauty meant under the sky's blue laugh, mid green scarf trees, and happy squanderings of scents and hues, in the field of the golden promenade of the sun, and the vigil of the dreamlight of the stars, amid high meditating heads of hills, on the bosom of voluptuous rain-kissed earth, and by the sapphire tumblings of the sea. But now the primal innocence is lost, and death and ignorance govern the mortal world, and nature's visage wears a grayer hue. But she then explains that this divine bliss is at the root of things in this world. She said at the bottom of 629, a secret air of pure felicity, deep like a sapphire heaven, our spirits breathe, our hearts and bodies feel its obscure call. Our senses grope for it and touch and lose. If this withdrew, the world would sink in the void, If this were not, nothing could move or live. A hidden bliss is at the root of things. A mute delight regards time's countless works. To house God's joy in things, space gave wide room. To house God's joy in self, our souls were born. And then she continues describing how the things of this world express this divine bliss and beauty. So now let's continue halfway down on page 630 at the line, even in this labor and dolor of ignorance. And we'll start here.
Even in this labor and dolor of ignorance, on the hard, perilous ground of difficult earth, in spite of death and evil circumstance, a will to live persists, a joy to be. There is a joy in all that meets the sense, a joy in all experience of the soul, a joy in evil and a joy in good, a joy in virtue and a joy in sin. Indifferent to the threat of karmic law, joy dares to grow upon forbidden soil. Its sap runs through the plants and flowers of pain. It thrills with the drama of fate and tragic doom. It tears its foot from sorrow and ecstasy. On danger and difficulty whets its strength. It wallows with the reptile and the worm and lifts its head an equal of the stars. It shares the fairies' dance, dines with the gnome. It basks in the light and heat of many suns, the sun of beauty and the sun of power. Flatter and foster it with golden beams. It grows towards the Titan and the God.
Thank you. Let's pause. So Savitri is describing how this bliss, this joy that is at the root of all things, we can experience in all the touches of the world through our senses, that we take delight, or our soul takes delight in all of these different touches of experience, even the painful and the dark and evil. We can take delight, or the soul takes delight in all experience. In another line, he says, it drinks experience like a strengthening wine. And as a result of that, it continues, it keeps struggling, it keeps moving forward on this long road of evolution through all the resistances that the world presents to the soul in its growth, for it senses that behind all of these experiences, behind all this pain and struggle and suffering, that there is this delight towards which it is moving, which one day will become fully manifest to the life. We see here, as I've been analyzing sentences in Savitri, just 2 sentences he read, one 4-line sentence and then a long 17-line sentence, just describing on each line how we take joy and delight in all the touches of life and the world. Not just we, but our souls. We may suffer those touches, but our soul within, deep within us, is taking delight in that. So let's continue, Paula.
On earth it lingers, drinking its deep fill. Through the symbol of her pleasure and her pain, of the grapes of heaven and the flowers of the abyss, of the flame stabs of the torment craft of hell, and dim fragments of the glory of paradise. In the small paltry pleasures of man's life, in his petty passions and joys, it finds a taste in tears and torture of broken hearts, in the crown of gold and in the crown of thorns, in life's nectar of sweetness and its bitter wine. All being it explores for unknown bliss, sounds all experience for things new and strange. Life brings into the earthly creature's days a tongue of glory from a higher sphere. It deepens in its musing and his art. It leaps at the splendor of some perfect word. It exults in his high resolves and noble deeds, wanders in his errors, dares the abyss's brink. It climbs in his climbings, wallows in his fall. Angel and demon brides his chamber share, possessors or competitors for life's heart.
Thank you. Let's pause. So this passage kind of continues that same idea of how the bliss at the root of things, the soul, the divine within, immanent divine, takes pleasure in all these movements of life, the light and the dark. And then there's one interesting short sentence where he says, all being it explores for unknown bliss, sounds all experience for things new and strange. Something about the life principle in general, I think, that seeks all experience, looks for all, goes in all directions, looking for delight in the experience. So in that search, it wanders far from the straight path, you could say. It wanders into the darkness, into pain and suffering, and all the contrary forms that delight takes in the world. Sounds, yes. It means, it's kind of an instrument that's used to detect what? The depth of the ocean or something. So it's looking for, it's testing. Yeah.
Also, a Huckleberry Finn. So his original birth name was Samuel Clemens, but he worked on the Mississippi River, and on the river, when the boat goes on the river, it must always be checking how deep is the water. Can this big boat, this big barge, go on the Mississippi River if it's deep enough? And one of the things that he said every time was, Mark Twain. It was a number. So Twain was like 20 or something. And if you were at Mark Twain, the boat could go. Oh. And he took that as his name. Oh. And that's sounding, putting that drop down. Yeah.
And then he describes towards the end of the passage of kind of the higher vital. I mean, the lower vital also is kind of searching for delight in all these varied experiences, but also the higher vital, which searches for higher things, higher expressions of delight. So it deepens in his musings and his art. It leaps at the splendor of some perfect word. It exults in his high resolves and noble deeds. So those are searchings of the higher vital for delight in greater things, or in art and beauty. But then also it wanders in his errors, dares the abyss's brink. Climbs in his climbings, wallows in his fall. That search for delight also is there in our higher aspirations for the divine or for any greatness, for any great accomplishment. but it's also there in our wallowings in pain or suffering. Yes, he kind of is implying that here, that this base of existence, like earlier also, he had on that previous page on 630, first he talked about this kind of thing within, which is enjoying all of this. First it was the hidden bliss, a mute delight, but then he talks about the all-wonderful has packed heaven with his dreams, and he has made blank ancient space his marvel house. He spilled his spirit into matter signs. So there he's talking about the supreme, the divine being. And he's taking delight in all of these various things. Mm. Mm. Right. Yeah. Yes, that's right. There is this witness consciousness of the divine, right, that impartially looks on all that is occurring. And takes delight, apparently, in it, for otherwise it would not exist. Yeah, this beauty and delight is in all things. And even here, he seems to imply, as B was saying about shares the fairies dance, dines with the gnome. He's not even speaking only of earth, apparently. He's also speaking of these other realms of vital existence where these beings reside. And then he goes, on earth it lingers, so then he speaks of it here on earth also. Yeah, in a single line. Well, I wasn't going to, but what should I say? I mean, it's just that we, or our souls perhaps, share our chamber with both angels and demons. We share our bed with these, our lives. So both play a part in our life, and apparently we take joy in both. Yeah, he does. It's coming. So let's continue.
To the enjoyer of the cosmic scene, his greatness and his littleness equal are. His magnanimity and meanness hues cast on some neutral background of the gods. The artist's skill he admires who planned it all. but not forever endures this danger game. Beyond the earth, but meant for delivered earth, wisdom and joy prepare their perfect crown. Truth superhuman calls to thinking man. At last the soul turns to eternal things. In every shrine it cries for the clasp of God. Then is there played the crowning mystery. Then is achieved the longed for miracle. Immortal bliss, her white celestial eyes, opens on the star, she stirs her mighty limbs. Time thrills to the suffix of her amor song, and space fills with a white beatitude. Then leaving to its grief the human heart, abandoning speech and the name-determined realms, through a gleaming far-seen sky of wordless thought, through naked thought-free heavens of absolute sight, she climbs to the summits where the unborn idea, remembering the future that must be, looks down upon the works of laboring force, immutable above the world it made.
Thank you. Let's pause. So we see this neutral background of the gods on which this play of light and darkness, of good and evil, are played out for the enjoyer of the cosmic scene. And those different shades are equal in his eyes. They're both his expressions, shades of the artist's skill in his painting of life. But then the idea shifts and he says, but this is not meant to go on forever in this way, that this is just a stage, and that higher things, a greater fullness of divine beauty and bliss are meant to be expressed without this shade of darkness kind of coloring it or darkening it, contrasting with it. Who's
First he says the enjoyer of the cosmic scene. So I'm wondering who is the enjoyer, and then he says artist skills, creator, basically the divine creator.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit confused.
Well, it's all the divine. He's also the enjoyer. He's also the artist.
So is death saying this, or is the Sri Aurobindo saying this? That is not clear.
Well, Savitri is saying this, but she's expressing Sri Aurobindo's view, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I lost track. So Savitri is saying this.
Yes. Savitri is arguing this to death. So then there's a few interesting lines here. Beyond the earth, but meant for delivered earth, wisdom and joy prepare their perfect crown. Truth superhuman calls to thinking man. So this greater divine bliss is being prepared above, but it's meant for us, and we are being called to it, to experience it, to accept it, to open ourselves to it. And then at last, the soul turns to eternal things. In every shrine, it cries for the clasp of God. The soul begins to seek the divine behind all the different appearances, the different forms of existence. All of life becomes a shrine, as if a temple to God in which He dwells. And the soul then worships, adores the divine in all of those forms. And then is there played the crowning mystery. Then is achieved the longed-for miracle. Immortal bliss, her wide celestial eyes opens on the stars. She stirs her mighty limbs. Time thrills to the sapphics of her amour song. So these sapphics are a meter used by Sappho, a Greek poetess of 600 BC. I don't know what type of meter it is, but apparently used for these love songs. And space fills with a white beatitude, because the divine begins to reveal Himself in all the different forms and touches of existence, of life. And then we turn to higher things, leaving to its grief the human heart, abandoning speech and the name-determined realms, through a gleaming far-seen sky of wordless thought, through naked, thought-free heavens of absolute sight, she climbs to the summits where the unborn idea, remembering the future that must be, looks down upon the works of laboring force, immutable above the world it made. So, who is she? Now, the pronoun changes here. Oh, immortal bliss.
Bliss.
But this is this indwelling divine bliss. But at a certain point, she leaves behind this grief and looks above towards the transcendence, overtopping this world of joy and sorrow, and looks towards the future that must be. So let's continue.
In in the vast golden laughter of truth's sun, like a great heaven bird on a motionless sea, is poised her winged ardor of creative joy on the still deep of the eternal's peace. This was the aim, this the supernal law, nature's allotted task when beauty drenched in dim mist waters of inconscient sleep. Out of the void this grand creation rose. For this the Spirit came into the abyss and charged with its power matter's unknowing force. In night's bare session to cathedral light, in death's realm repatriate immortality. A mystic slow transfiguration works. All our earth starts from mud and ends in sky. And love that was once an animal's desire, then a sweet madness in the rapturous heart, an ardent comradeship in the happy mind, becomes a wide spiritual yearning space. A lonely soul passions for the alone. The heart that loved man thrills to the love of God. A body is his chamber and his shrine.
Thank you. So as this imminent divine bliss at the root of things grows, evolves, and gradually looks above this play of light and darkness to the transcendence above. Finally, at its summits, in the vast golden laughter of truth's sun. And that seems to be describing symbolically the supermind. This golden color is the color of the supermind. But that golden delight of truth's sun, sun is also a symbol of that divine truth. So in that delight of the supramental consciousness, like a great heaven bird on a motionless sea, is poised her winged ardor of creative joy on the still deep of the eternal's peace. One of the important characteristics of that supramental consciousness is this kind of unification of an absolute and deep peace and silence with this creative joy, with power and delight and knowledge, this creative consciousness. And then he says, this was the aim. This, the supernal law. This is what everything is moving towards. This is the law of our existence. Nature's allotted task, when beauty drenched in dim mist waters of inconscient sleep, out of the void this grand creation rose. So this was the aim since the beginning of this creation arising out of the void in its long evolutionary journey towards the supramental truth and consciousness. For this, the Spirit came into the abyss. This was the purpose. And charged with its power, matter's unknowing force. Matter evolves all of this with its force. It's inconscient, unknowing force, but yet it is charged with the divine's force and knowledge. So inevitably, it moves towards this realization. This is its law. In death's realm, repatriate immortality. So, repatriate, to restore or return to the country of birth or origin. So to reclaim this earth, or reclaim this death-bound life to its original immortality. And then a mystic, slow transfiguration works. Slowly this transformation comes on our world, our life. And then he describes this change of love in this evolutionary journey. All our earth starts from mud and ends in sky, and love that was once an animal's desire, then a sweet madness in the rapturous heart, and ardent comradeship in the happy mind, becomes a wide spiritual yearning space. A lonely soul passions for the alone. The heart that loved man thrills to the love of God. A body is his chamber and his shrine. So the love changes from this animal desire to this kind of mental comradeship to the love of God in another being, or in all the beings, in all the forms of existence, where we see then the divine within all, but we don't shun the form. We don't turn away from the form just to the transcendent, but enjoy the divine being in his house of body. The body is his chamber and his shrine. Well, it's our future. The world's future, he mentioned. So it's for us, for our souls. This slow transfiguration works in us and is working in the world. Yeah.
He uses this image of from the mud to the sky, which of course is the lotus transformation process. And then he links it to love. So this transformation that every human being has to go through on the reason of love to get to the divine. And overseeing this is this vast golden laughter. So when you add the laughter factor, it's so much more interesting.
He's taking delight in all of this. And yes, love is the key here. It's that key transforming force, actually. Sri Aurobindo, I was just assembling a compilation on love and divine love. And he speaks of this divine love as like the most powerful, greatest transforming force. Mm. Mm. Yeah, that may be the most powerful way to respond to this darkness, even to the, death's arguments here.
profoundly ensure Hindu's understanding is something divine, laughter, divine joy, a divine humor, which is based on an inner, comes from the soul and the psyche. And it's not an external human translation.
Yeah, he spoke of this divine laughter from above in the transcendence, but yet that also may be behind, the joy. The divine bliss is also behind the joy that's in the world. And, that laughter Sri Aurobindo speaks of as like the salt of existence. I mean, it's something that sustains us through all of these trials and tribulations of this, darkened existence, that if we can laugh at it, sometimes that's like the greatest strength that we have, that buoys us, uplifts us, carries us through it. And of course, like in the US, in all this drama, we have these Jimmy Kimmel every night, like making fun of Trump and making fun of all of these, disastrous things that go on. And not only him, but all the late night talk show hosts and comedians. And so that, I think, helps sustain people through all of this.
Me, and then we understand the limitations of that, and then we keep growing. So that's the dynamic, because we can't jump to the divine enjoyment immediately.
Right.
This is an evolutionary process for each human being, and without this other part, we never get there. This is the spiritual bypass that people do. To be spiritual, then they cut these off.
Yeah.
But we have to be connected 100% to what we would call the integral yoga.
Yeah, that's an important point, I think. We see, many spiritual disciplines just rejecting the whole play of life in the world. Just leave that all behind and just go towards that transcendent bliss. But somehow that may not always work, because as long as we're embodied beings in the world, we're tied to the earth. And that's why this transmuting form or force of love is so important, because it transforms that darkened state instead of leaving it behind.
Point that he keeps bringing up in different ways in so many places, that matter and spirit are not separate.
So let's continue.
Felt in God, a lover leaning from his cloister's door, gathers the whole world into his single breast. Then shall the business fail of night and death, when unity is won, when strife is lost, and all is known and all is clasped by love. Who would turn back to ignorance and pain? O death, I have triumphed over thee within. I quiver no more with the assault of grief. A mighty calmness seated deep within has occupied my body and my sense. It takes the world's grief and transmutes to strength. It makes the world's joy one with the joy of God. My love eternal sits throned on God's calm, for love must soar beyond the very heavens and find its secret sense ineffable. It must change its human ways to ways divine, yet keep its sovereignty of earthly bliss.
Thank you. Let's pause. This first sentence is quite beautiful. Then is our being rescued from separateness. All is itself. All is new felt in God. A lover leaning from his cloister's door gathers the whole world into his single breast. It suggests God reaching out from his isolation and reaching out and gathering all the world, all his flock into his arms. Then shall the business fail of night and death. When unity is won, when strife is lost, and all is known and all is clasped by love, who would turn back to ignorance and pain? It makes me think that, this laughter, it's also, an expression of love, right? I think like God looking down on existence and laughing, but he laughs because also he loves that whole play that is going on. It's his. And these are all perhaps disguises of himself, and he knows what it is moving towards, but This laughter also is kind of an expression of love. It's not a kind of a rejection. You know, it's not like fighting against. That's why, in a way, it's powerful. You know? It's kind of accepting, perhaps mocking, but still kind of accepting that perverted form or whatever that is being expressed. Yeah. Right.
Solemn separateness, and then he opens the door to everything.
Right. So that's like the room of a monastery, I guess, where a monk might live or a nun might live. So the divine opens the door and reaches out and gathers all into his embrace. Sometimes Sri Aurobindo will speak of him as the alone, right? Because also he transcends all of this, but at the same time, this is all his expression or his manifestation. So then he also gathers that. I think he's going to gather all into his embrace. And if we look at this world, we're most concerned with our world. So here he will gather the whole world into his embrace. It doesn't mean that everybody will look exactly alike or be exactly alike, but all will be changed and transmuted into something wonderful. Well, I think speaking about the future, no? Then shall the business fail of night and death. So when he comes out, when he gathers all, and this is coming after this slow transfiguration that's working here in the world. And as the divine bliss that's within the manifestation begins turning towards the divine, towards the transcendent, and not only just towards the other appearances of other beings, other human beings in the world, but looks beyond the form to the divine within and turns to the divine above. Then this business of separateness and death fail. And then we see all in the embrace of God.
No future. So this is what's happening.
Pralaya?
Struggling with the Is it connected to the Twilight?
Well, I look at Pralaya as being more that kind of inconscient base or origin from which all arises. So a kind of a darkness, an inconscience. But here he's talking about a flowering of consciousness in the manifestation. And even he has talked about there being these different cycles of pralaya, where the manifestation again returned into the darkness and again evolved out and again returned. But then he speaks of this kind of last one where it will not return into the pralaya, into the inconscient, that this flowering of the divine in the world would become an eternal happening, an eternal event, and it would continue. And that this evolutionary growth could be unending, but now in the light of the divine and no longer out of the darkness. Yeah, so that's a... Yeah, I'm suggesting that he's speaking of a flowering of consciousness in the world where it will no longer sink back into the inconscient. Yeah. Well, she's speaking in, like conversation, and she has been speaking a long time about this emergence of the divine bliss in the world. And now she just is addressing him by name again, but it's a continuation, but here she's shifting, right? So there's a shift in what she's speaking about here. And now she speaks kind of more directly about the present moment, that she has triumphed over him. And so she brings it back kind of just to their more immediate situation. So Sri Aurobindo is perhaps reminding us that she is speaking to death. But we might do that in a conversation too. We might, say, but no, this is what I'm trying to say here. So we can repeat the name. Let's continue. I don't remember, did you read? Okay, so then we go here. No, she's finished. Did you read or you want to read? She's read, so then, okay.
O death, not for my heart's sweet poignancy, nor for my happy body's bliss alone, I have claimed from thee the living Sattvavan, but for his work and mine, our sacred church. Our lives are God's messengers beneath the stars. To dwell under death's shadow, they have come, tempting God's light to earth for the ignorant race, his love to fill the hollow in man's heart, his bliss to heal the unhappiness of the world. For I, the woman, am the force of God, he the eternal's delegate soul in man. My will is greater than thy law, O death. My love is stronger than the bonds of fate. Our love is the heavenly seal of the Supreme.
I God that seemed against thy rendering hand, love must not cease to live upon the earth, for love is the bright link twixt earth and heaven. Love is the far transcendent angels here. Love is man's line on the absolute.
Thank you. Pause. So in this last part, she's responding to Death's argument that her love for Satyavan, it's just a kind of a yearning of her flesh and all of this. And she's saying, no, it's not for my happy body's bliss alone I have claimed from thee, the living Satyavan, but for his work and mine, our sacred charge, which is kind of beautiful. It reminds us of Sri Aurobindo and Mother, I think, of their work for the transformation of man. Our lives are God's messengers beneath the stars. To dwell under death's shadow they have come, tempting God's light to earth for the ignorant race. His love to fill the hollow in men's hearts, his bliss to heal the unhappiness of the world. For I, the woman, am the force of God, he, the Eternal's delegate soul in man. And then she says, my will is greater than thy law, O death. My love is stronger than the bonds of fate. Our love is the heavenly seal of the Supreme. I guard that seal against thy rending hands. She will not allow death to divide them. And then she speaks of the significance of love. Love must not cease to live upon the earth, for love is the bright link twixt earth and heaven. Love is the far transcendence angel here. Love is man's lean on the absolute. What is this lean? Obligation. It's the deal. Huh? It's a formal written kind of obligation to repay. Something that it's borrowed from the absolute, perhaps. Huh? Yeah. Something that it's taken. I don't know. Anyway, it's what ties us to the absolute. Um, um. So we'll stop there for today. This is the end of Savitri's long 13-page argument.
But to the woman, death, the god, replied, O human face, put off mind-painted masks. The animal be, the worm that nature meant, accept thy futile birth, thy narrow life. But Savitri replied to mighty death, my heart is wiser than the reason's thought. My heart is stronger than thy bond, O death. It sees and feels the one heartbeat in all. It feels the high transcendent sunlight hand